Welcome to Classic Petroleum, the channel dedicated to the times of old. When it comes to adventure films set in exotic locations, few ever come close to the grandeur of 1951's The African Queen. With Katharine Hepburn and Humphrey Bogart in the leading roles, the film is set in the backdrop of World War I and shows how the ripple effects reached as far as Africa, then at the height of European colonialism. Based on a 1935 book by C.S. Forester, The African Queen tells the story of Charlie Allnut, played by Humphrey Bogart, and Katharine Hepburn as British missionary Rose Sawyer. After German troops burn Rose's mission, which leads to the death of her clergyman brother, Charlie comes to her rescue, helping her bury her brother and escape down the nearby river on his rugged steamboat, the African Queen. Although the two are at odds with each other almost immediately, in part because Rose despises Charlie's drinking and coarse behavior, she manages to convince him to attack the Louisa, a German warship stationed at the mouth of the river.
If we were to fill those cylinders with that blasting gelatine, and then fix them so that they would stick out over the end of the boat and then run the boat against the side of a ship, they would go off, just like a torpedo, wouldn't they?
Yeah. They're detonators in the end.
We could, get a good head of steam up and then point the launch toward
As their journey continues, the mismatched couple suffers one hardship after another, including rapids, torrential rains, and damage to the boat, and they constantly trade insults and barbs along the way. Perhaps the breaking point comes when, in a terribly drunk state, Charlie lashes out at Rose.
Psalm singing, skitty old maid!
Having emptied every drop of gin stored in the boat, Charlie is forced to go sober and starts shedding off, quite literally, his raggish appearance. Rose also has her moment of transformation as she learns how to steer the boat over dangerous waters. The once prim and monotonous middle-aged woman evolves into a daring heroine, all the while letting her guard down and opening up herself to love. Eventually, the mutual admiration for one another sets in, which soon turns to something a bit more than a platonic relationship. It might not seem as amazing today to learn that the film was mostly shot on location in the perilous jungles and rivers of the Congo and in Uganda, but back in 1951, shooting a film, let alone a Technicolor film, on location was simply unheard of. Color cameras were huge and unwieldy to move, and to operate them while afloat proved to be a production nightmare. Most of the action took place aboard a boat, so as seen in these pictures from the set, scenes were filmed using a large raft with a mock-up of the boat on top. Sections of the boat set could be removed to make room for the large Technicolor cameras. However, this proved to be especially dangerous as, on one occasion, the boat's boiler almost fell on Hepburn. Conditions on site were simply hell. The production team and the cast were also living in constant outbreaks of illnesses from the poisonous water, something that Bogart and the director jokingly admitted that the two of them never got sick since they fortified themselves with the large supply of whiskey they had brought along. But despite the Spartan conditions and harsh African climate, production went ahead slowly and steadily. Perhaps the anchor holding the entire production from collapsing was director John Huston himself. Having directed The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, also shot on location in Mexico and starring Humphrey Bogart, Huston's experience of steering a film production outside the comfort zone of a studio proved to be a saving grace for The African Queen. Of course, having perhaps the two greatest screen legends of all time made matters much more bearable. Hepburn was known for her physical prowess and energy, while Bogart, on the other hand, was the master of staying calm and focused in the midst of chaos.
Humphrey Bogart.
It never occurred to me.
I know.
I did. Well, didn't I marry him in The African Queen?
That's right. Every time I
Yeah.
see that, I think, I wonder if they could have been happy together. Was he a funny man to be around?
When The African Queen was finally released on the 26th of December 1951, it blew all expectations at the box office, making almost 10 times its budget. Both Hepburn and Bogart were nominated for Academy Awards, and Bogart ended up winning for Best Actor in a leading role, his only Oscar. Hepburn, on the other hand, would go on to win 3 more Best Actress Oscars in other film roles, and both cemented their names in the Hall of Fame of the greatest actors and actresses of all time. The film ends with the pair finally drawing near to the Louisa, but before they can carry out their plan, the African Queen capsizes during a storm the night before the planned assault. Captured by the enemy, Charlie and Rose are sentenced to death, but they convince the German captain to marry them first. In a miraculous turn of events, the Louisa suddenly collides with the African Queen and explodes. In the ensuing commotion, the newlyweds swim to safety, with perhaps one of the most endearing endings put to film.
Which way is the east shore?
The way we're swimming, old girl. There was bold fisherman set sail from up in the cove to catch the bold piggy and the gay mackerel. But when he got up in the cove, the wine ship began to blow.